couldn't wait any longer. I should have waited another minute, but it's time to get moving. Hey, everybody, this is Jeff Colson, Junior Hockey Live. Let's bring in the star of the show, the one and only Bloomer. Hey,
what's
kid
up,
with the
Jeff?
hat on backwards. Can you go get your dad? Tell him it's time for the broadcast.
I can. I like the suit.
It's not a suit. It's a jacket.
It's a suit jacket. It's got buttons on the cuffs.
It's a sport coat.
Exactly. Exactly.
Somebody's got to class this place up.
Well, it isn't me, that's for sure.
You changing the oil on your car earlier or what?
I was, yeah. I was actually, drilling holes into the wall and, doing some housework today. So surprisingly.
Drilling a hole. Wow, your generation, you drill a hole in the wall and you're doing like carpentry.
That's right. Might as well just put an ad on.
Did I ever tell you the story of the first time I ever got a bonus check when my wife and I were just married? We hadn't had any kids yet. I called her up on the phone. I said, hey, I got a bonus check. We can either go on a vacation or we can remodel the kitchen because we lived in an old, like 100-year-old house. And we decided to remodel the kitchen. So I went out and bought a Sawzall and just cut a big hole in the back of the house to put a door in.
Nice.
I mean, seriously, the only thing I did was I checked for wires to make sure I wasn't cutting any wires. And I just literally cut a big hole in the house. Needless to say, about 6 months later, we had to hire a professional to come in and unscrew everything I did. So I'm not much further ahead of you on the scale of carpentry work there. We got a lot to talk about tonight, man.
Yeah, we do. It's been a while since we've had an episode.
I wonder why. Hey, if I
What's been going on?
yeah, I had to fight that COVID thing. First time though, believe it or not, in this whole process, the first time I had it. And I should take that back. It's the first time I noticed I had it. I have a feeling there's a few times that I probably did have it. Now that I went through and tested and did the whole thing, I think I'm 90% over it, but boy, oh boy, here's the kind of family I live with. So, I'm spiraling early last week. I mean, I'm going downhill quick. And my wife and my son are trying to get out the door on Wednesday afternoon because they're going to drive to Wisconsin, clear out his apartment at that school and move everything to the University of Michigan, where he's going to school now. And so I'm like, okay, great. I feel terrible, but I got to get an oil change. They're taking my truck, so I'm going to go get an oil change in the truck. And I get there, get the oil change, and I'm dead. I'm barely able to pull out of the parking lot. So I pulled next door to the CVS, went inside, got a COVID test because I promised you I was going to get one. Bloomer, right. I did.
Appreciate it.
Didn't I take a picture of it and send it to you saying?
You did.
Yep.
You
so I take the test. Things. Right there in the parking lot, I wait the 15 minutes, I've got COVID. So I go home, and I'm literally like stumbling in the door. I'm on my deathbed. I'm thinking, should I buy one of those, respirators for $150,000 and just bring it in the house and hook it up to the lungs and do my own IVs, all that stuff. And my wife and my son go, hey, we'll see you later. Left me with 3 dogs and no food in the house. So that's my week of COVID. I can't move. I'm on my back and coughing like crazy. Can't stop the. So hey, if I jump off the screen or I block my screen or put you up to full screen and mute myself, it's because I still might have a little bit of that cough. But anyway, ready to talk hockey?
Through it.
I thank you, man. I appreciate it.
As someone who has had it 3 times, when I was talking to you earlier in that week and you're telling me what you're dealing with, I'm like,
he's got it, huh? He's got it. Well, I'm glad I went through it just because, so many people have and kind of know what it's about now. And it really felt like a flu at first, but it didn't feel like a flu in the middle and the end. It's got its own distinct characteristics. So at least the version of the strain I caught,
Yeah.
And, hey, I don't get into politics, but I don't know why I wasted my time on those 3 shots because I still had it for well over a week. It didn't lessen the effects. It didn't. I mean, the only thing I could have done Worse than where I was at is, actually go check into the hospital. So I don't know what those 3 shots are supposed to do. So anyway, I don't want to make that a political statement. Anyway, tonight, can I say anyway anymore? Okay, no, I cannot. That's it. We're done with anyway. We got to talk about playoffs and some of our predictions. We have to talk about the NAHL expanding again. Where'd that come from? Didn't see that one. And we got to talk about some major junior hockey. We don't talk a lot of major junior hockey, but this one's important. This is significant enough to talk about. A little bit of expansion, not expansion, a little bit of rule change coming in one of the 3 major junior leagues, and we're going to talk about that a little later on. And so, where do you want to start? I want to start with the playoffs. I want to talk about this and see if I went like undefeated, perfect record, batting 1,000.
I don't think you're going to be as happy after we go through this as you are right now on the predictions.
You changed everything. You penciled it in, and then you went back and there's tape on all this,
I know.
We keep tape on all this.
That's what I went back through to get what we said for each individual team and whatnot.
Okay.
And,
where are we starting?
Let's start with the NA3.
NA3. Okay.
Because that one is complete at this point. So we know who the champion is. It's Granite City.
Congratulations, Granite City. Good job.
Yeah, that was actually, I don't know if you had a chance to watch that final game versus Alexandria.
Just the highlights.
But it was back and forth. I mean, really, Alexandria took control of the game early. Granite City had given up 5 goals, and then they come marching back and end up scoring to make it 6-5. I don't know. There's probably like 8 seconds left in the third period. It's like, that game was unbelievable. I can only imagine if you were a part of that game or at that game and watching it live, that had to be super exciting. But, one of the things that I got a lot of people that had reached out to me, and this isn't really something we're talking about, but it just, reminded me of it when we were talking. They had the NA Combine that was going on at the same time, and, gave a lot of people a chance to see what those final 6 teams in the NA3 look like, because those games, those series were going on while those kids were all competing. And I can't tell you how many people had reached out saying, I cannot believe how good the NA3 is and how good that hockey was. So that's kind of cool that they do that with the Combine being there at the same time as the playoff event.
Yeah,
because it's best on best.
That is that's the big thing about it, though, and this is the problem we have with most of the leagues at that level, in that tier 3 level, is, of course, there's some great NA3 teams, and there's 6 to 10 teams that will really, shock you with their abilities. They're solid, they're well coached, they're deep. The programs are well funded, they're well managed. It's not the same on the bottom. And if we look at the USPHL, of course, there's some premier teams that are just really good teams, but you got to weigh them against the other 3,000 teams in that league, and it changes when you look at the bigger picture. The one thing I like about the NA3 versus the Premier is, as a percentage, there's more continuity of, your standard deviations are tighter. What I mean by that is, if you take the best and then you kind of tier it down in the Premier, that bottom step is way down there. And if you tier down from the top teams in the NA3, you only go down a step or 2. You're not going down 6 or 7 steps. And that's the difference between the 2 leagues. And it's so hard to figure out which league which team inside of that league is good, because unless you just go by history, because there's so many teams and they're so spread out. There's no way you or I or anybody else could have a full understanding of what next year is going to look like now in that league versus you look at the NA3. And this is, I don't like to plug leagues, and I'm not trying to plug this league, but I'm just saying that the consistency is better in one league over another. Period. That's it. Doesn't mean the top team isn't always better. You take the top team in the Premier and you play them against the top team in the NA3, that could be a battle. That could be a real good battle. I'd love to see it. I'd love to go back to the days where we actually had real playoffs like that. We won't see that. We'll never see that again, or at least not the way things are completely formed right now. So,
right.
Anyway, good job, Granite City. And, good job, the final 6 teams. I mean, there were some good teams there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about because we hadn't had an episode once teams advanced into the final 6. So what we'll do today is we'll go through our predictions on who we thought was going to advance out from each division, and who you and I picked, and then who ended up advancing out, and we'll kind of look at who got more right when it comes to our predictions early on, and then obviously once they all got there, we didn't have an episode to crown a champion. But, if you want to walk through it, I got them written down here where we can kind of, talk about the 2 teams that were at the semifinals or the ending, like the champion of their league, and then who advanced out.
Let's talk.
Let's do it. So for the first division that we went through, it was Rochester versus Oregon. That was the 1 versus 2 to advance to St. Louis. You and I both picked Rochester, and Oregon ended up advancing out and actually made a really good run, throughout that final 6. But
I hear that game is under protest still. There was some shenanigans going on, that Rochester should have won that game. I don't know what all the circumstances are, but to keep my record straight, I'm going to still give myself a win on that one. Okay, next.
We're 0 for 1. So the next matchup we had was in the Frontier Division. We had Helena and Gillette. And that's the division where I had picked Gillette. You had picked Helena, and Helena had won and advanced out. So you got a plus on that one. So you're 1 up on me now in these predictions.
1-0. 1-0.
Yeah.
All right.
We have the East Division. That was Northeast and Danbury. You and I both picked Northeast to come out, and they did. So we both got that one. So right now you've got 2-1. I got 1 and 2 as far as my predictions.
Okay.
Then we got the South Division. That was the Texas Brahmas versus New Mexico. We both picked the Brahmas. Obviously, Homer picks, but they ended up advancing out. They beat New Mexico and advanced to St. Louis. So we both got that one right. And then in the final division, that was Granite City versus Alexandria. I picked Granite City. I actually picked Alexandria in our first episode and then switched to Granite City. And then you picked Alexandria, and they ended up winning and advancing to St. Louis. And then Granite City got the at-large bid. So when we go through the NA3, with the exception of Rochester versus Oregon, you picked the 4 other divisions correctly.
I'm still protesting the one so that I could keep my perfect record. But that's not bad, huh?
Not bad. And if you go back and listen to the tape for when we did this, when I switched from Alexandria to Granite City, I had mentioned I don't see too many teams being able to beat Granite City. They were one of my favorite teams to watch throughout that year. And you were picking Northeast as your I guess champion of that playoff series, and I ended up picking the winner, but they had to go down a different path since they lost to get there and then got the at-large bid. So just kind of weird how that played out, but really good games that weekend.
I don't know if that counts at all for you. At-large bids don't count. Okay, Alexandria came in the right way. They were given that's politics. Something's going on there. I'm still protesting. I should be perfect in my record.
You're 4-1. I was 3-5. So for the overall, you definitely hit more on your projections than I did, but I will claim the champion.
I'll give it to you. Well done. Well, it was good hockey across the board. Until the finals, or when you start getting into the deep playoffs, then you saw a couple scores that got a little bit out of hand. The Brahmas won I think their final game, like a 6-2 game, which is kind of odd. I don't know if that's first time there itis. I don't know if
I think
that's
so.
a lot of things, but overall though, pretty good. I'm very, very excited to see that brand of hockey being played that well. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to watch, and it was a lot of fun to see the level. And you're right. I'm glad that was during a showcase event so that other people could see the brand.
Right.
I think that's where the EHL does such a great job is they try to mix events so that you can see the brand and keep things going. So, and we'll talk about the EHL next week, right?
Sure.
Or are we going to do that today? Because I don't think you made predictions on the EHL, did you?
I didn't. I didn't weigh in. So when we went through the EHL, you basically were walking through who you thought were going to make the playoffs. So, I would imagine most of the teams you picked to make the playoffs would have, unless it was maybe like that 3 or 4 might have swapped or something like that. But, as we go into the next episode, we can talk more about,
Yeah, we'll
how
get
that
into that.
finished out.
Okay, let's talk about the NCDC.
Yeah, this is your league, man, up there in the Northeast. When we went through this, we basically went through with the NCDC, they have 2 different divisions. The cream of one crop was the Northern Cyclones. They were, from wire to wire, the top team in that conference. And then the Hitmen were the top in their conference. So as we walk through, and I'll give you some credit here, when I went back and rewatched to see what our predictions were, even though you picked the Northern Cyclones to advance out to the championship of that particular bracket, you did say you'd really like to see South Shore make it out because you respect that program, and they were having a pretty good season, and you were hopeful that they would advance out, but you ended up picking the Northern Cyclones.
Come on, you got to give me credit for that.
Well, I would have if you didn't circle back after you said how much you hoped that program advanced out, and said, but you know what, I got to pick with the best team that I've seen, and it was the Northern Cyclones. So for those who don't know, the championship is South Shore versus the Pal Junior Islanders. So your predictions, Jeff, was Northern Cyclones versus the Hitmen. My prediction was Northern Cyclones versus the Pal Islanders. So I still have one in.
I'm still so glad to see this. That's 2 of your old school programs, Pal and South Shore. Good to see fresh blood in there. Hitmen, they win it all the time. And I was going off of history there. I haven't watched this league as much as I have in the past, but I am very, very happy to see Pal and South Shore in there. I don't want to predict a winner here because they're 2 programs that both deserve to throw a win up on the wall, put a banner up, because it's been a while, and good for both of them. Good for Pal, good for South Shore.
Yeah, what was surprising too is looking how the first round went. Both the Northern Cyclones and the Hitmen, who were the 2 top teams, they didn't even make it out of the first round. So,
bizarre,
just
huh?
How that played out.
Hitmen suck. Who would ever pick them? They ever win a game? Come on, Hitmen, you're letting me down. I pump that program's tires off of their history all the time, and then they lay an egg like that. Holy smokes!
Yeah,
I guess the times are changing, man.
And it was a sweep. They got swept too, which it's just really surprising. I mean, I think we all know how strong that program is, and they were having a great year also. I didn't get to watch any of the games, so I'm not sure what exactly happened, but it was definitely a surprise. And then, the Mercer Chiefs ended up moving on to play Pal, and then they got swept. So,
Pal turned it on right at the right time. Anytime. I mean, South Shore number 1 seed ended up, being the number 1 team. Pal was the number 2 seed, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, and so good for them. Good for them across the board. So how did the numbers work out there? I didn't do so well. Did you do any better?
Well, I still have a horse in the race because I picked Pal to go on to win their division or their bracket, I should say.
You got
So
to give me a horse in the race with South Shore. I kind of predicted them, or I at least put some loyalty behind them.
yeah,
So
I'll give it to you. So then you have South Shore and I'll have Pal in this because the final starts maybe tomorrow. I'm not sure when the actual
yeah, that's
championships start, but let's uh, let's stick with our horses. It's both the 2 seeds because
yep.
South Shore was the 2 seed, Pal was a 2 seed. So let's stick with our teams and let's see who
I
comes
think
out at the
South
end.
Shore was a 1 seed.
No, Northern Cyclones were.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm looking at the brackets now.
Oh, because
Northern Cyclones
I'm looking
were
at their.
number one all year.
Yeah, I wonder why they changed it because now they've got they reforced rank. Oh, I know what happened. I'm sorry. So it's a glitch in the system. I'm on the Game Center page for the NCDC, and it shows their stats. You know what? You know the schedule, or excuse me, the standings of all their games they've played so far. And since South Shore, uh, in other words, what they did was nobody really set the rankings on that page. It's just picking up all the overall teams that were left in the playoffs. They took
I
all
see.
8 teams, so um, it shows them as being the 1-1, and it shows Pal as being the number 2, number 1 in their division. But that doesn't matter because all it did was grab those. Sorry, it re-ranked them. So just a
Wrong
computer glitch
again.
there.
Wrong again,
Yeah,
Jeff. It's
yeah.
all
I'll take that wrong. I'll take that wrong. I think overall, though, the record is pretty significantly in my favor overall so far. We haven't even got into the EHL yet, or the NAHL yet, or the USHL.
yeah.
It's going to be embarrassing. It really is. I don't know what you'll do. Because you clearly can't stay on this podcast when you have a record like that. Especially when all the different leagues come in, you have to find something else to do.
Well, let's see if that
Middle
plays
school
out
girls volleyball.
the way you think it will, because
Oh, I know how it's going to
we,
turn out.
we've already talked about how I've been knocking it out of the park with my predictions on the USHL, but they haven't gotten to the playoffs yet. But a couple of my predictions there are coming out, ringing
Okay,
true.
we'll see. All right, let's talk major junior hockey.
All right.
So you gave me some news earlier in the week. You want to fill everybody in on what the news is, and then we'll, throw some expert commentary on it.
Yeah, so for those who haven't heard yet, the Q or the QMJHL, which is the Quebec Junior League, they have announced that they're going to ban fighting for next season and obviously beyond. So that definitely creates some ripple in, I guess, in the hockey circles with a league coming out and officially banning it. So I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Probably, share my thoughts as well, and maybe some of the listeners can share their thoughts as they hear this news.
No brainer. You ever watch this league play?
I have.
Well, I didn't even know that they had fighting in that league. Okay, and if there is a fight, it's hitting each over the head with a purse. This is not a
Nice.
league that's known as tough guy league, and I honestly doesn't bother me a bit. They can ban fighting in that league every day. Maybe they should promote skill development in that league. I think that'd be a great place to start compared to the other 2 major junior leagues. They're a third wheel. They're a back seat. Banning this is not the right move. They should have promoted more fighting. They should have actually gone just the opposite direction and say, we're going to start actually hitting in this league now. We're going to actually start playing hockey in this league now. So whatever they're doing, it's fine with me. I really believe that they're light years behind the O and the W. And I'm extremely impressed over the last few years at how good the Western League plays. And the OHL is the OHL. It's always going to be the apple in the NHL's eyes because there's so many good old boys that come through that, have gone through that process and come up through the OHL, that even when statistics prove that they're not the top league anymore, there's NHL scouts and managers and coaches that still think that everybody's got to come through that league. So, no, this isn't big news to me.
Yeah, I think, you're right when it comes to how many total fights that they have. And I think they tried to crack down on it a few years ago. I'm not sure how many, but they would then have like a 10-minute misconduct penalty and a 5-minute major. So that in itself kind of cracked down a little bit on the fights that did happen in that league. But my biggest thing is that if this becomes now a trend where other leagues start to follow suit, it's just a really disappointing outcome for our sport. And I say that because, fighting has always been a part of it. It's not only the entertainment value, but it really does create, people think like, hey, we got to be more safe and the concussions and, we want to promote, this, when they did this, their big thing was safety and whatnot, but it was also, we want to promote more skill and speed and all this other stuff. We know that even in the NHL, they've taken fighting out and they've taken players that are willing to fight out of the game because of how much skill and speed is involved, with the way it's played now. And we've got more injuries and more superstars that end up getting injured because you have guys running around at top speed, laying body checks and things like that. You can't tell me that Wayne Gretzky wasn't as successful and didn't have the room to be creative on the ice that he did without the guys like Marty McSorley and, some of the other guys that, help protect him and keep the flies off of him, that he was able to be who he was. And I think if we had guys that are willing to do that, and it starts at junior hockey, understanding who is able to fight and who's not. And you and I have the same issue. When we're watching midget hockey, we have no idea if any of these kids are tough or that, if they're actually willing to fight or anything, because they can't. They're not allowed to in their leagues. So it doesn't show us who might be able to do that at our level.
I just think this whole thing's hypocritical. It really is. You've got USA Hockey that promotes two leagues inside the USA Hockey system that both promote fighting, and a kid can be in the league at 16, 17, 18 years old, which is the same age that U18 players and U16 players are at, and they can fight because of the league they're in, but the U18 players can't fight. It's hypocritical. To be honest with you, I'm surprised this hasn't caused. I know we're talking. I just brought this into a different league, but it stands with these other leagues too. I'm surprised we haven't seen some huge lawsuits from a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old getting their ass beat by a 20, 21-year-old with a half shield on, which is another contention. If this wasn't so hypocritical, they'd all have full shields on already. What's the reason of wearing a half shield? I mean, honestly, what's the reason? Because it is easier to see the players on the ice? Right? You could argue that. Does it help? Well, no, because when you're watching it on TV, you can't see their face anyway. And the majority of people watch these games on TV. It's fine for a football player to wear a full cage. So the hypocrisy on this is you can't have fighting and have shields in one league of the same age players sanctioned by the same governing body when players are doing just the opposite in another league. I don't get it. Either you allow fighting or you don't allow fighting. I could care less on either side. I do give you a subtle little bit of disagreement on the issue of seeing if a kid is tough or not, because honestly, even at the North American League, the guys that you think are going to be the fighters aren't usually the fighters. Anybody can be your tough guy. It could be one of your smaller players. It could be one of your skinny, scraggly guys that just is willing to stand up to anybody and do what he's got to do. So it's not
my point is, how are you identifying that at the midget level? You can't.
Well, you're right, but you still have to. We all do. We all still go out and scout and try to find kids that we think are tough. We talk to their coaches, and some of this stuff doesn't even ferret out. I can tell you, when my kid was coming out of U18 and went into junior hockey, he'd never been in a take the gloves off, take the helmet off fight, and his first season he had 3. I think he probably had 3 every year. And it shocked the hell out of me because I wasn't expecting I didn't see that in him. I didn't see that when he played 16s and 18s. And they got to juniors and it was part of his game. Didn't see it. Wasn't expecting it. He's a skilled player. He was, he's a kid that wants the puck on his stick. But I guess the old adage, when the bell rang, he was willing to step up. That's where you really, I don't know if you really can. You can talk to coaches. You can get an idea what a player's like, but that's not my point. My point is this whole thing is hypocritical. It's just flat out hypocritical. The reason why you don't have full shields and you have fighting in the USHL and the NAHL is because the amount of money it brings in the door for the ownerships. I'm sorry, that's the truth. There's no other reason to have it in there. That's why it was in the NHL for so long. You can say the Gretzky thing, and I get it, but you know as well as I do, you could have officiated that away, the clutch and grab. I mean, they remember they used to call it the Norris division. They used to call what was the division Detroit played in the
black and blue.
No, the football. What was the Chicago and Detroit played in a football division at the time. I forget what their conference was called, but they used to call the Norris division that conference because it was all
the Chuck Norris division.
Yeah, it was all clutch and grab. All clutch and grab across the board, and that's the era that that Gretzky played in. You could literally take your stick and hook it around somebody's waist and have them pull you all the way down the ice during playoffs, and it was legal. I mean, literally.
Yeah, but that's much different, though, when guys are taking runs at Connor McDavid or, Connor McDavid got hurt like 3 years ago because somebody cheap shotted him. Like, that stuff would never happen back in the 80s or the 90s when there were more guys that are willing to fight and things like that in the league because you'd have to answer the bell. Now in the NHL, there's very few guys that even can answer the bell or are willing to, which is why Ryan Reeves is running around like he's, a heavyweight champion, but yet there's no other heavyweight. That there's like 5 total guys in the whole league that are willing to fight him. So, you take that out of other leagues and it's just going to create a situation where the game is going to completely change and some of the little nuances are going to completely get taken out of the game.
And I know that we're never going to solve this issue in a debate because tomorrow I might come in and say just the opposite of what I'm saying now because there was a great fight on TV or there was a great fight in the USHL or the NAHL and I'm all like fired up because they are entertaining. Good fights are entertaining. It is part of our game right now. It's part of our culture. But the other side of me says everything you're saying could be officiated out of the game. If a guy's running around like a nut or if a guy hurts Connor McDavid, make him pay. Make him pay drastically with something so severe that everybody else in the league goes, I'm not going to take a cheap shot at a guy because I'm not going to pay that price. So it
boring.
Can be boring. You might think it's boring, but remember what the NBA looked like in the 80s when they could just punch each other in the face? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar went nuts
when they actually played defense and the games were competitive to watch.
No, but they'd actually throw fists after the whistle.
Yeah.
Like
why
left
not?
And right.
Bill Laimbeer, baby. Rick Mahorn.
Well, it wasn't even that. It was Bird. It was not Jordan. It was Magic. It was Bird. It was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. They're all just throwing fists. They get in a little tussle underneath about a rebound. They just start punching each other in the face. And maybe one guy gets a technical. And if it drew blood, maybe they, kicked a guy out of the game for the game. Big deal. But it went away because people started going, you know what? That doesn't look like our sport. And I contend that hockey's a little different.
But even then, what they're creating is rivalries. Right now, there's no rivalries. There's no hatred. Everybody's friends. When they have a rivalry, it's like, hey, watch Connor McDavid play, some other superstar. And it's like, that's not a rivalry. Those two teams don't have any hatred. You're just saying, here's a really good player on a team, and here's a really good player on a team. You should watch this game.
So you're saying that other sports don't have good rivalries? I mean, I'm not saying you can't get, crazy if something really inflames you. What's that?
What's a good rivalry today in the NHL?
I don't know. I don't watch the NHL like I used to. I really don't. I mean,
but there
I'm
isn't
probably
any
the last
rivalry.
guy. What's that?
There isn't any rivalries anymore.
Well, you could say that there's still the Pittsburgh Philly rivalry. You can still say that there's the Pittsburgh Washington rivalry. That's a pretty good rivalry. Colorado Detroit's always going to be a rivalry. I don't care how bad they are, how good they are. That's going to be a rivalry. So I mean, they're still out there. I just don't watch the sport at that level as much as to be an expert on what rivalries are out there. Hell, I can't even tell you who the top 10. I mean, it used to be everybody knew. In the circle I was with, and I'm probably sure the circle you were with, everybody knew who the top 10 players in the league were. Everybody knew who the top 10 scorers were. I can't even tell you who the top 10 are. I just don't watch the sport the way I used to watch it because I'm so involved at different levels now. So I'm not a good one to ask. I just think that there's getting back to the Q situation. Let them try. Let's see what happens. Will they put more players into the NHL? Let's see. Will they get softer? Let's see. I would contend that they're already a soft division of the three. They're already the least productive of the three. They got to do something. And, let's see if this helps. Maybe the next thing they'll do is start bubble wrapping all their players too. Just put I don't know. It just to me doesn't seem like it matters in that league. Now, if you would have said that if you said the USHL or the O or the W or the BCHL, NAHL, one of those programs are going to do it. Knowing the alignment with USA Hockey, I think this also shows you the pressure that the NHL puts on USA Hockey to keep fighting at the USHL level and the NAHL level, because they've gotten rid of it at every single other level, but it stays at 2. It just doesn't make sense. It's very hypocritical, except those are the 2 leagues that have, Division I and pro aspirations, and all the money comes into the, any money that's funded through USA Hockey to support those leagues comes from the NHL. There's a few $1 million that come in to support both the USHL and the NAHL and to showcase their players. And I think that's one of the things that I don't know how, when that first big one comes, when that big first problem comes, I don't know how USA Hockey officials are going to be able to weather that storm. They're going to get canceled. It's going to be one of those things where there's going to be a backlash because they could have done something about it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying it's hypocritical. Either you come out and say, hey, if you're 18 years old and you're playing U18 hockey and you want to wear a half shield, go right at it. And we're gonna re-legislate the rules at U18 to allow a more physical brand of hockey. If you've got 2 willing combatants, they're still going to get penalized. Give them their 5 and their 10, their 2 and their 5 and their 10, or whatever you get. But once again, tomorrow I'll change my opinion and I'll argue the other side of this. So it's one of those things where, what are you going to do? Anyway, a couple people got comments on this. Let's see here. All right. First one. Liz says, I worry about banning fighting. There's going to be more cheap shots. Yeah. See, I agree with you, but then I disagree, Liz. I think that, just like any other sport, you can legislate this stuff out by putting a more firm, aggressive set of applying the rules that are already there. And you're right. Cheap shots. Cheap shots. Remember, back when I played youth hockey, if you didn't get a boarding or if you didn't get a check from behind before those were penalties, if I didn't check somebody from behind 3 times during a shift, it wasn't a productive shift. Then they put in the rules that said you couldn't do it. It went away. I mean, yeah, you get a few here and there, but nowhere near. I mean, the whole game used to be played where you just splatted people from behind and you cross-checked them from behind. You came in the boards and you popped them with your stick. All that stuff went away because the rules are applied. Andrew says hello from New Brunswick. He's the closest one that should be giving his thoughts on Andrew should be giving his thoughts on what's going on with that Quebec League. He's the closest. I mean, it's New Brunswick. It's not necessarily that close. But okay, KS says, considering the NCAA requires cages in college, it doesn't make sense that there aren't required in juniors. I agree with what you're saying, KS, but remember, a lot of these players coming from the major juniors don't go the route of Division One. They're going, half or all the way up through the pros. So, and let's see. Here's
probably talking now about USHL and NAHL or NCDC.
Yeah. Andrew says Montreal, Quebec was. See, that's a key word there. Was a good series. Are you talking about this year, or are you talking about over time? I think that some of the greatest hockey games I ever watched when I was a kid came out of that series right there. Liz is right. Edmonton, Calgary, that's a good rivalry. I think it still exists. A lot of fun to watch when those two teams get on the ice. And then Matt says, I feel like rivalries are still built on previous years. It is not the same as it in the years past. I think everybody will agree with you on that one, Matt. It's clearly not the same as it used to be. Used to get some extremely, extremely heated rivalries. I mean, we lived for 10 or 15 years off of one game between Colorado and Detroit. One guy gets cheap shotted, and then the rest of the, there's movies and there's documentaries made off of that rivalry just because of how heated it got, and probably the greatest rivalry we've seen in this sport that was that intense. I mean, that was a lot of fun to watch over the years. Very good. Let's Andrew's going to send a message about what's going on and what's being said around where he's at. I look forward to seeing that. Going to some of the other sources of messages is coming in. Jeff says hi, or Brandon says hi from Amherst, and Jeff Fogelberger's checking in saying hi too from Weston, Wisconsin. So if we missed you, throw your comments up there. We'd love to hear what your thoughts on this. Bloomer, last words on the Quebec thing, anything?
Hate it.
I won't lose a moment of sleep over this news. It's not like I'm pondering where things are going because of this.
Well, you got to look at the long game. If it starts creeping into other leagues, we got a problem. It may not be a specific problem for the Q with how that league is played, but if it starts the trend on other leagues, that's terrible.
Yeah, I heard that about football too, when they couldn't body slam quarterbacks anymore, and they couldn't, poke two guys in the eyes anymore. You couldn't get them down on the ground and give them some kind of atomic bomb hit with your shoulder and your elbow like you do in WWE. All that stuff went away, and football's still pretty good. Still got some good rivalries.
Yeah, but it's not as good. Even when you talk to the current players, they say the same thing. If you listen to Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or any of those guys, they hate the new rules. It's almost like they're being pampered too much, and obviously defensive backs can't have the bump and run or any of that stuff that they used to have. I mean, everything is going towards offense, just like the NBA. And without any defense,
you're gonna love sitting in that nursing home going, back in my day, things were really tough back. Come on, the evolution of sports always happening, man.
But are they for the better? That's the key. And so far in all the leagues, they haven't been.
I hear that MMA, they're going to start having to wear headgear, and they're going to put 8-pound gloves on all the guys too. So my
then
point
they'll
is
be boxing.
Exactly. My point is, things are going to evolve. Things are changing. We're becoming more civilized as people. So that's the way things are. What's the other news we got to cover, man?
We got a new team in the NAHL.
Come on, another new team.
Who is it? It's up by you.
It's not.
New Hampshire. In that area.
It's New Hampshire. No. Yeah, New Hampshire.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So we talk. It seems like every other week now we're talking about a NAHL team, and we're going, this is probably okay. It's not oversaturated yet, and there's room for growth. And then the next week, it's just one more team. They're not oversaturated yet. There's room for growth. I don't know what to say. This one caught me off guard. I mean, I'd heard rumors that was going to happen in that area, but I thought it was going to be one or the other. I didn't realize they were just going to go, everybody, come on in. Let's go. Everybody. Anybody else out there? You got to check. Let's put a team in. And I know there's more thought to this than just that, but this is happening faster and quicker and with less fanfare. And I guess usually if you're in the hockey circles, you kind of get some heads up on these things. You and I always seem to know what's coming down the pike a few months down the road, or a few quarters down the road. And it seems like a couple of these just came out of the blue and caught everybody off guard, not just us who were at the lower ranks on this, but even people that are usually well in the know on this stuff. So I'm looking at this going, okay, fine. But does it – are they moving the right direction on this? And this is where, Mike, I think you and other people too, I'd love to hear what our audience has to say on this. Is this – we're seeing the BCHL evolving, and we're seeing the BCHL that's saying they're going to put more effort into putting one or two more teams into the northwest of the United States. You have the NCDC with their Western expansion. Now, that doesn't scare me, because the NCDC, when the EJHL did the same thing with the South, when the South didn't have any hockey down there, and they did it for purposes other than quality hockey. And I still believe this. And that's why I'm seeing some of the other social stuff out there saying this league will be on par, the NCDC West will be on par with the NCDC East within a couple seasons. Bullshit. You're not going to put a team in the West and have them be the same as the teams that are the founding teams. They won't let it happen, okay? The league won't let it happen. They're not going to lose their thunder by expanding their league with this West that will actually rival, the core that they've already built. There's not an independent commissioner sitting here that has autonomy on designing this. This is not a board that's looking at the overall. These are a few individual owners that run the NCDC. And I know I digress, but when I look at the NAHL and I look at the USHL, I go, geez, the Northwest is wide open, and we don't seem to be putting much of an effort there. Colorado's not the Northwest, okay? That's almost about as middle of the United States as you can get, maybe a little bit west, but that's still a central location. We're not hitting the market that's going to be attacking us, and I really wonder why we're not putting more of an effort into that area versus the East. Now, you could say the East has got a lot of players, and that's where all the players are, but L.A., Washington, Arizona. These are all super growth models as far as USA Hockey is concerned. You're getting great numbers out there. The Kraken, they're out there now. That's only going to continue. Look what happened with LA. They had that boom when pro hockey got into that market, especially when Gretzky came in. Pro hockey in Arizona. All of a sudden, you saw youth, growth take off. I think we're missing the mark on this. I don't have a power, I don't have a vote on this, but my thought on this is wrong market. Will they be successful? Probably. Will they have a impact on that area? Yeah, but it still leaves Rochester, New York, hanging out there as a lonely travel trip for the rest of the league. There's no travel partner, and there's nothing within 6 or 7 hours of Rochester and the East. And the East Coast doesn't like those kind of drives. It's not the West or the Southwest where you expect 4, 6, 8 hours, maybe more now with travel, but different kind of travel. You and I talked about this the other day. Getting on a bus where it's a one-shot drive between point A and point B, and you don't get off the highway, you're in a sleeper, and it's smooth, is different than being on the East Coast bus drive where you're going through toll roads, you're stopping, you're turning, you're in tight traffic, you're in bumper to bumper. Bus is doing this, it's stopping and moving, it's swerving. It's a totally different way of traveling, and it's a different comfort level between, and that goes for other leagues too. The BCHL, AJ, you get these long expansive rides. They're not half as tiresome as these East Coast 4 or 6 hour rides. Those rides are hell because it's a grind. You're stopping, starting, jolting, popping. Anyway, what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah. And you consider the difference of weather, when you're traveling in the South or in the Northeast, they're not battling snowstorms and, all the other stuff that comes with it. But I don't really have an opinion on the location itself as far as like attacking maybe the Northwest rather than the Northeast like they have been. I think there's probably going to be more teams that are going to end up, expanding in the Northeast over the next few years. And
Right.
this is just the start because, as you and I talked about, it's hard when you look at the travel of how that really connects dots to be like a sustainable division when there's that much travel involved up there. So there's got to be a couple other teams that are kind of on the horizon that'll pop in that could maybe have more of a Northeast division or an East division. And what you see that's the makeup of that division now kind of breaks off into two separate divisions. But I don't know that to be fact. I'm just looking at what that travel would look like and thinking that, for Rochester, maybe Syracuse or maybe Buffalo or, someone else, or maybe even both of those different areas, there's opportunity there to make the travel make a little bit more sense for those teams. But I think them jumping into New Hampshire itself is good. There's so many colleges that are in that area, with
Of course.
Massachusetts, New
Yeah.
York, and whatever else, and hockey, youth hockey. That you keep kids local into that area. If anything, it might actually pull a couple kids from the NCDC because we've talked about it on this podcast before. The strength of the NCDC, the way that it is now in the East, is that there's a lot of players that are from areas that have teams in the NCDC that are not quite at the ability level of the USHL. And instead of going into the North American League, they'll just stay and play NCDC because they've already committed to their college when they
Right.
played
Right.
U15, U16, AAA in that area. And that's really what beefs up the skill level of that league, which is why when we talk about the NCDC West, it's going to be very difficult for them to have the same type of talent that the NCDC East has because you don't get those local kids that stay in that league because that it's home and they don't have to play in another area to get their commitment. They've already got it.
Right.
Um,
Well, and that used to be the big strength of the Western League before the Western League fell, and it wasn't necessarily a hotbed for super high elite players that were tier 1, tier 2 players. What it really gave kids was an exciting chance to do something different. Go live in the West. Go play hockey in the mountains. Go be able to see the world a little bit, get away from home, and still be able to play a level of D3 hockey or ACHA that was fun. It was still a grooming, I hate to use the word development, but it was grooming kids to get them stronger, bigger, more mature to get ready for college. So the league had a place. It wasn't a top place in a niche, but it was there. There was a room for that league, and they had a purpose. People used to call it outlaw. They used to call it renegade. They used to call it all kinds of names. So what the NCDC is doing is they're just filling that void. They took over a lot of these franchises with the premier level, and they're gonna elevate that a little bit from premier, which needs to happen. Premier, who knows what that league is because some teams literally are made up of mostly tier 2 players. Some teams are really on the cusp of having some great young talent coming up, and the league is just all over the board on that. There that stratification of players. It's like instead of shooting with a laser bullet like the EHL does, EHL knows exactly what they are. Boom, we can shoot you. The Premier League shoots with a shotgun splatter birdshot, and it just covers everything. They don't really have an identity, and I think this NCDC West is going to help with that identity. But I still get back to the point. Why isn't the USHL and the NAHL addressing the fact that they're weak on the West Coast and they're extremely weak on the Northwest? And I know what the USHL's argument is hey, we're fine where we're at. We're not on the East. We're not on the Southwest. We're not on the West. We just got a little pocket through mid-America, and those are markets that like the USHL, and they're markets that have adopted and agreed that the USHL is a product that they will support. And so I get that. But the NAHL doesn't have that model. The NAHL is basically wherever the NAHL is expanded to. I see them going to Colorado, and maybe that's a leapfrog to get us up that direction. I just don't know. So Jim asked the question here, Mike. He says, do you see expansion into the state of Michigan? The NAHL is tried numerous times to expand into Michigan. and it's very, very tough. Junior hockey in Michigan is really tough. And you ask why? Well, once again, think of it this way. You've got a couple populated areas. Grand Rapids, Detroit, that's populated. Michigan or Flint is not a hockey town except for they do have an OHL team. They've got a rink there that's really good, and they get support for one team there. Saginaw's next up there, but after Saginaw, you don't have a big population. You got a summer population in Traverse City, and you got some, northern population that just isn't sustainable for, a major franchise. Then you go into the dollar. You look at the disposable dollar. Now, don't think of your entertainment dollar across the board. Think of entertainment dollars that are spent on hockey. Where's your money spent? Well, your money spent first and foremost, Red Wings games. They take up a big part of that market. Toronto's still close enough to be a factor in a certain part of the state, which is the thumb. People will shoot over to Toronto to watch a game. You got Chicago, that the southwest part of our state picks that up and becomes a fan base for disposable dollars down there too. I know a lot of people in the Grand Rapids area that'll go catch a Chicago game, and it's like us in this area here. We'll have people that will go watch Columbus or they'll go watch Toronto, even though Buffalo's here. Now, the next tier down, you've got the you've got the National Development Program that doesn't always have a great crowd. Sometimes they have wonderful crowds right in Ann Arbor. Well, what does Michigan have that no other state has? They have tons of D1 hockey. You've got Michigan State, you've got Western, you've got Ferris, you've got 3 schools up in the north part of the Upper Peninsula. You're just chocked full of talent. And right below your border, you've got Notre Dame with a program. You got Bowling Green sitting there with a program. You're surrounded by D1 talent, and then you've got OHL talent. You've got Saginaw, Flint, you've got Sarnia, and you've got Windsor. All hockey area established major junior hockey. 4 major junior programs, all with Michigan-based fans there. So the NAHLs come in before they've been in Traverse City. The NAHLs come in before they've been in Alpena. The NAHLs come in before they've been in Flint. All these different things came and went, and a lot of it's because it's hard to support a program that is not major junior hockey. You don't have the same appeal when you've got the NHL that pours money into marketing their product and marketing what they have, which is the OHL. The OHL is a direct descendant of the NHL. Very, very difficult market to break into because of the infrastructure that you've already got there as far as hockey. You do have a USHL program in Muskegon. It took over an old pro barn, and it fits very well. It's far enough west that it stays out of the hair of the NHL, but it's got an AHL franchise right around the corner. That's what it's remarkable that those 2 programs get along. So do I see it? It could happen, but boy, oh boy, a lot of people have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to put in all programs into the state of Michigan. I just don't know if it's going to, and the roots are deep there. I mean, you go way back to the paddock pools and, programs like that. There's a history of NAHL out of Detroit. In fact, the heartbeat of the NAHL started there, but I just don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see those days coming back.
Wasn't the CompuWare NAHL team at one point?
Yeah. The CompuWare program was, back in the day, I think it was maybe 4 teams. I think you had St. Clair Shore Saints, Paddock Pools, CompuWare, and somebody else out of the Detroit market. I'd have to go back and look. That's old
back
school.
then. Yeah, back then the NAHL was actually the premier junior league, and the USHL was more of the second seat when it came to that overall. And then it kind of flipped over the years. But, first shout out to my college roommate, Jimmy Kalage, with that question. But I think if it were to work and the NA would come back to Michigan, it would actually possibly work if they went to Kalamazoo, just because of the travel schedule of getting into Wisconsin and Illinois and things like that. Because if they were more on the Detroit area side, that's a long commute, again, to try to get to the next closest team. And Kalamazoo still does have a hockey market. They obviously have an East Coast team, and they've got the Western Michigan Broncos that are there. So there is quite a following there. that would be probably the only place I could see it working.
Yeah, you're right. Kalamazoo might be interesting. Shout out to Western Michigan. I believe that they just had a player come out of the Victory Honda program at Western Michigan. Max Hassan, I think he just signed his first pro contract coming out as an undrafted player coming out of Western. So good to see that.
Yep.
I know the family, I know the player, and well deserved on his end. So good for them. I know I just changed subjects there real quick, but you said Western Michigan, and I had information. Hey, look, I don't have much more to cover. How about yourself?
No, I mean, we hit the hour mark and we've gone through everything that we wanted to. So unless there's any, viewer questions or whatnot that we want to walk through, I think we've covered our topics.
Yeah, if you got a question, throw it on. We'll stick around for a little bit. Yeah, it must be your roommate. He threw the old SCS baby up there.
Yeah.
Just so you know, Jim, 9 in Harper for this guy here. So down in the hood of St. Clair Shores, not up there in the rich suburbs of St. Clair Shores. Right in the hood of St. Clair Shores. So I'm looking back at the back in the day with the NAHL. I just pulled up their 82, 83, and it won't pull the history up for me. I was hoping it would pull up I was looking for the history on EP to see what teams are around there. I know I can pull it up somewhere, but I'll do that later.
Somebody like really well known, famous, played for CompuWare back in the day? Like, I don't know if it was like Eric Lindros or somebody when they were like
I think it was Eric Lindros. I'm almost positive it was Eric Lindros. Your mind does not fail you on that one. Yeah, but it was like you said, it was a different league and a different time. So, all right. So I guess we got no other questions coming in. Your roommate says that's where I live now. 4-minute walk to the rink. The old St. Clair Shores rink where you pull off the road and you go on to like 10-mile-an-hour corporate boulevards, left and right, and none of the streets make sense. It's just all corporate buildings like warehouses, and then all of a sudden, boom, the rink's there. Spent many a days, and that's where Gordie Howe stiffed me. I signed up for my Gordie Howe camp when I was like 8 years old or 9 years old, and Gordie Howe's got a camp in St. Clair Shores. Now his sons played for the junior team at the time, the St. Clair Shores Saints, or at the time it might have been the Detroit Junior Wings playing out there, but they played out of St. Clair Shores. Yeah. And so I went to Gordie Howe's camp, and the last day, he came over and opened the door and stood by the door and patted us on the head as we walked off the ice. That's horrible. I signed up for Gordie Howe camp and got a pat on the head. He didn't go on the ice with us. He didn't even show up for his own camp until the last day and then patted me on the head. It took me years.
He looked at the ability on the ice and said, not worth my time.
He took the money, though.
I actually have a Gordie Howe story where we were playing at Fraser, and there was like a buzz going around the rink. We were actually practicing at the time that Gordie Howe was there. So our coaches like let us off the ice to go and see him. So I was playing for the Mount Clemens Wolves at the time, and for some reason we had to practice at Fraser. I don't know if it's because of ice going on at Mount Clemens or whatnot, and we needed to grab it at Fraser, but we run off the ice, and it's me and one of my friends, Justin, and we go over and Gordie's like, "Hey, what's your guys' name?" And I'm like, "I'm Mike." And my buddy's like, "And I'm Justin." He's like, "Justin? Oh my God, you kept that name?" And literally my buddy just starts tearing up, crying, because we're just little kids and it's like our hero, and he just made fun of him or whatever. Just random.
One of my buddies after college hockey and after pros, actually his name's Todd, went up to Traverse City, retired from the Detroit Fire Department, and took an early retirement, moved up to Traverse City and became a fireman up there. And so this is probably going back 15 years now. He's got a men's league game. He's in the fire department, living large. He's loving life. He's in the whatever night, Wednesday night, 10 o'clock league or whatever it is, and he's in the locker room with all the guys, and the door just pops open, and Gordie Howe's got an old, like, 1945 Red Wings bag and his sticks, and he goes, "You guys don't mind if I jump in, do you?" What do you say? No. It's freaking Gordie Howe. He just pops in the locker room up there and says, "Hey, you guys mind if I jump in?" So yep. what an experience! You're playing in men's league, and all of a sudden you're online with Gordie Howe. What
what's cool about growing up in the Detroit area is there's so many guys that once they retire, they just stay within that area. So you see them all the time, whether it's just randomly, like, out and about, or they end up showing up at ice rinks just to either, watch one of their family members that are playing or whatnot, or just to get into the rink and watch what's going on. It was a ton of fun. We used to play at the GPCR, that Grosse Pointe Arena.
Spring League. Did you play the Spring League there for men's?
No, I was a kid. I only lived in Detroit until I was a freshman in high school.
See, that answers so many questions. You dropped out of high school, and look what happened to you. You wear your hat backwards now at 40 years old.
See, that's right.
If you would have stayed in school, if you would have stayed at Lakeshore and graduated, things would have been much, much better.
Probably. But anyway, so when we would play, probably like 8 a.m. practice, there would be the men's league that would play before it. So you would always see like Jimmy Carson or Bob Probert or Joey Kosher, some of those guys that had already retired, Sean Burr, they would be out there playing before. So we show up, probably 8, 9 years old, all tired, getting to the rink. And next thing you know, you see all these pros that are just out there having fun playing hockey. It was cool. That growing up in that area, if you're into hockey, there's so many players that you're going to constantly bump into or get coached by, or, who knows?
Absolutely. Listen, let's get out of here. You got to give your old roommate a call. He's like, put 4 or 5 comments, maybe 10 comments on there already. He's going through a nostalgic period. So call your roommate.
He's a good dude. He's a good dude.
Give him a little chat there. Hey, folks, thanks so much. Don't forget, Monday night, we're back on live. We'll be talking about the process, junior hockey from a process standpoint. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll edit this up. We'll clean it up. We'll make it look better. You can watch it. If you get a chance, make sure you go to Junior Hockey Live, subscribe there. Always would like to see you on Junior Hockey Advisor. Subscribe there. Discussion groups, Junior Hockey Advisor. We cover everything. Jump on there when you get a chance. And we'll see you next Wednesday night as we go through more of my stellar predictions. And then we'll let Mike talk a little bit too. See you, everybody. Good job, Bloomer.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you, Jeff. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks.